one of the things that I really enjoy is when I was studying. I am self-taught, but when I was studying, I had access to a lot of First Nations and African work, and one of the things that really set me free was the sense that I got from the African work was no separation of spirit and human form. So there was a wonderful flow back and forth. And I experienced a similarity in First Nation work by First Nations here in the west coast of Canada, in that there's no separation of flow between the human form and animal form, but also a spiritual form. So that gave me a lot of latitude in the abstraction and flow of the pieces that I do. I do not make a separation between myself and spirit, animal. I see it all as one, and I use those concepts a lot in my work, and you'll get that sense of flow within the work. I think the other question was about what it is that I'm trying to say with my work. So my work started really as a visual exploration, and almost as an art therapy as I explore myself. Because a lot of what I was thinking and feeling wasn't evident to me, but would come out in my work. So I would work and finish a piece and look at it, and sometimes even with help of other people looking at the work would tell me what the work was about, because it still was an unconscious process for me. And that plays well into the techniques that I use doing what I do. I often will just sit, because I work a lot with stone or objects that are starting with some kind of shape, and then I'll work with that shape and just explore it and dig into it until I'm comfortable with the composition or the finished product. So it really has been a method for me to come to understand more or less my inner thought process and bring it to the forefront and put it out for other people, because what I'm exploring is our experiences. And so when people, I think, look at my work, they resonate with it because, again, going back to the common language, but also the common experiences. And it may not necessarily play out the same for each one of us experience work, but it does pull them in and pull out their own exploration and emotion. And that is what I'm after. One of the things that you'll see in my work, it depends on what I'm using, what kind of material, and the material does influence the outcome, as do tools. I find that every time I get a new tool, it changes the way I work, and it also changes the way I think. Well, material is that way. When I'm working with stone, I'm often looking, when I buy stone, I look for a piece of material that I find interesting in itself before I even start. And then I engage in more or less a dialogue with that piece of material, and the finished piece often is just a response to the stone and that dialogue. Similarly, when I'm working on some of my other work, I'll work with, I do a lot of foam work, and I work with found foam because I live on the ocean. It's endless, big pieces, small pieces, and I'm always looking for interesting bits of found foam. And very similar in that it is a dialogue that I engage in with that piece of material. Now, the nice thing about foam is it's a subtractive process, so I can carve it, and then I'll do an additive process where I'll cover it with plaster and then start working the plaster back again, so it's additive, subtractive, additive. There's lots of time working that way to change the direction of the flow and ultimately the outcome. One of my favorite pieces of inspiration is a movie of Picasso working and watching his process. And one painting will go through maybe anywhere from 15 to 30 different incarnations before it's finished. And that is so freeing, that concept, and working in that kind of way. Well, it's similar when I'm working the additive subtractive process. And another way I work is with wax, just direct wax. And again, that's an additive and subtractive. So I can move with that. And then, again, it becomes a dialogue with the material. It's a different type of material, so it changes the way I work, the way I think, and ultimately the outcome. Within it all, the language stays the same. You can see the continuity from one to the next, but each does in itself allow its own freedom and movement.